calendar ran a little bit late this morning, but I do know that there is an acknowledgement that Representative Carlin would like to mention to the committee. Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just didn't realize that some of the folks here are shadowing Representative Alcala, but would you stand in the back? These are young people from various communities around Kansas that were in the Youth of the Year Award from the Boys and Girls Club. I went to the dinner last night, and I'm sorry I don't remember all your names, but they give talks and are judged on their presentations. And one of the girls there is the military child or the youth leader of the year for Kansas. The others were runners up, and they did a wonderful job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Committee, first item on the agenda, are there any bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Today we're going to be talking about lottery, video machines, casino gaming, and sports wagering throughout the state of Kansas. And so I would now invite Stephen Durrell, the Executive Director of the Kansas Lottery, to give us a briefing for the committee. Welcome, Mr. Durrell.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the invitation. It's always good to see you and the committee. You do have our written testimony in front of you. I will do you the honor of not reading it verbatim, but I will try to go through and give you some of the highlights. I wanted to go through and net sales starting at the beginning for, we obviously have three different silos which we operate here at the lottery. We have the traditional lottery, we have casino gaming, and we have sports wagering. So we'll go through all of those as we do. Starting with traditional lottery for fiscal year 2023 totaled $338.2 roughly million as compared to $312 million in fiscal year 2022. This was the highest sales year ever for the lottery, fiscal year 23. And it bested the record from the fiscal year 2021. There were some very large jackpots last fiscal year, and there were three of them totaling, three separate jackpots totaling over $1 billion. I would like to point out that tonight's Powerball is, for those of you who have not gotten your tickets yet, tonight's Powerball is $687 million. Friday's Mega Millions, $977 million. So almost $1 billion on Friday, but it'll probably be bumped up by then. Let's see now. Instant ticket sales were $203.6 million in fiscal year 23, which is a slight decrease of 1.6% compared to $207 million in 2022. Nationwide, that's sort of a trend that the instant games are sort of down because most of it, as you've heard, the jackpots have been incredibly high in the last several years for some of the draw games, and you'll see when we get to this current year they are down still as well, and there are a number of factors that are possible for that. Total combined sales for all draw games were $134.5 million in fiscal year 2023 compared to $106 million in fiscal year 2022. Draw games were boosted by large jackpots, obviously, as we just mentioned. Combined sales of these two games of Powerball and Mega Millions were $76.6 million in 2023. And the previous year in 2022, they were $24.9 million. So you can see the huge difference in draw games. In fiscal year 2023, the lottery paid out more than $205 million in prizes to lottery players. Retailer commissions were just over $19.8 million. Cumulative figures through fiscal year 23, the lottery in its existence has totaled a sales number of nearly $7.5 billion. Nearly $4.2 billion in prizes were paid to players, more than $430 million were paid to retailers, and more than $2.1 billion was transferred to the state since the lottery began. Vending machines, always a popular question. Currently, there are about 360 vending machines across the state. In fiscal year 2020, there were $6.4 million in sales, resulting in $1.7 million being transferred to support mental health programs, which is a specific beneficiary of vending machine sales. In fiscal year 2021, it was $18.7 million, $5.5 million to $5.5 million to mental health. 2022, it was $24.6 million, with $7.4 transferred to mental health, and in 2023, it was $36 million, with $9 million going to mental health. In the first 6 months of this year, calendar or fiscal year, $29.5 million in actual sales, $9 million going to mental health programs. So obviously we have several more months in the fiscal year, some money that will continue to go to mental health programs. Let's see here. Transfers and fiscal year 2023, the State Gaming Revenues Fund, Veterans Programs, and Mental Health Programs all received about $85 million roughly. You can look at, I won't go through the actual numbers of what the Economic Development Fund, Juvenile Detention Fund, et cetera, all got. That's on page 2 of your written testimony. As shown above, the total transfer is $1.26 million provided benefits to Kansas military veterans, totaling about $23.7 million since the program was brought into existence in 2003. Those transfers support the National Guard Educational Assistance Act scholarships, veterans' homes and cemeteries, and the Veterans Enhanced Services Delivery Program. And additional money is generated. Some folks forget that the folks who win also pay taxes. So in fiscal year 2023, they paid about $3.3 million in taxes. We also managed to collect $287,000 through the Department of Administration set-off program. And an additional, I should point out that our casino partners also collect through set-off, and they collected about $2.7 million worth of set-off monies that were owed to the state and other programs. Just as we always continue to try to innovate at the lottery, we continue to be very successful with our play-on program. As of December 31st of 2023, there were 285,000 members of our play-on, which is our loyalty program. More than 100 million tickets have been entered or screened by players, and players can submit winning or non-winning tickets, draw or instant games to earn points for, if they win, they can scan and they get additional points that they can use for additional contests. During the calendar year 2023, more than 21 million tickets had been checked through the app. In fiscal year 2024, we also had our Holiday Millionaire Raffle, which is very popular. We sold out all 150,000 tickets, and we gave away on a live broadcast on January 3rd. We announced the winning numbers, and that prize has been collected. We also try to offer a variety of different instant games. We offered 42 instant scratch tickets during fiscal year 23, including our continued relationship with K-State and KU, Kansas City Chiefs, and NASCAR through Kansas Speedway. We also then continue to collaborate with our other folks like the Kansas Fair, which we were always happy to do. So far in fiscal year 2024, the lottery's instant games continue to perform well, with $95.7 million through the first 6 months. Instant game sales are down about 4.2%, and we are still on pace for a good year. We introduced several months ago our Premier Play game, which is offering the largest instant jackpot that the state has ever offered. As my microphone cozy falls off there, excuse me, and which is a $500,000 prize instantly. We've had one of those collected already. The remaining 3 instantly are still out there, and we have a second chance $500,000 prize as well. Total sales for draw games in the first 6 months of 2024 were $93.5 million. Current year-to-date sales are, I guess you just heard, in part due to large national jackpots. Across all games, year-to-date sales were $224 million, which is about 12% down from this time last year. Additionally, through the first 8 months of fiscal year 2023, the lottery's transferred about $60 million to the state. Moving on to expanded gaming, which is our casino gaming. You will look at the chart at the top of page 4, and you will notice that most of the casino gaming continues to be down. We are, of course, dealing with any number of factors that have those down. Boot Hill Casino is down about 3%. Kansas Star Casino is down about 2.5%. Hollywood Casino is up actually about 2%. And Kansas Crossing Casino, our friends down in the southeast part of the state, are down, unfortunately, 7.6%, which is a total down from last year of only about 1.5% total across the board. Through fiscal year of first year of 2024, revenues have decreased by less than 1% compared to, or sorry, a little over 1.5% compared to 2023. Casino revenues transferred in 2023, fiscal year 2023, the state of Kansas got $89.6 million. Cumulatively, since the casinos opened, that's $969.5 million. The Problem Gaming and Addictions Fund last year, fiscal year, got $8.1 million. Cumulatively through fiscal year 2023, $88.1 million. And city and counties across the state got $12.2 million for $132 million cumulatively since the casinos opened. In the Southeast Gaming Zone, I won't go through the numbers on what distribution percentages there are. You can read those. In fiscal year 2023, the Southeast Gaming Zone casino made about $41.1 million. South Central Gaming Zone, which is a Kansas star, made $161.2 million. Northeast Gaming Zone, which is our friends at Hollywood, made $156.5 million, and our friends at Boot Hill made about $48.2 million. Moving on to sports wagering. As you all know, in 2022, the legislature passed Senate Bill 84, which authorized sports wagering. Sports wagering revenues, if you look at on page 6, are defined as total wagers that were completed less voided wagers, federal excise taxes, free play, and promotional credits, and the amounts paid as prizes, which limits the amount that the state is eligible to get. Under Senate Bill 84, 90% of sports wagering revenues are paid to facility managers, and 10% is retained by the state. The first $750,000 that is retained by the state each fiscal year goes to the White Collar Crime Fund, which is then distributed after that. 2% then goes to the Problem Gaming and Addictions Fund. 80% goes to the newly created Attracting Professional Sports to Kansas Fund. And 18% goes to the State Gaming Revenues and State General Fund. Let's see here. We want to talk real briefly about, we always seem to get questions about the Chiefs. The Chiefs have had a great couple of years for football and for football fans in this part of the nation. For wagering purposes, it hasn't been terrific. In February 2023, which was their first Super Bowl of the two back-to-back ones that they have won, state share of revenue for February 23 was $1,100. By the end of the following month, they'd made up a lot of that, so we jumped back up to $911,000. In February of 24, we did a lot better at $305,000, and then by the end of March, we'll figure out where we are after that. But they're recovering nicely. If you jump over to page 7, you'll see that the current numbers for sports wagering revenues, in-person wagers for so far through 2024 are about $449,000. Online wagers are, I'm sorry, that was the state share of wagers that for in-house wagering. Sorry, total wagers for sports wagering is $1.6 billion. Revenue is about $80 million, and the state share of that is about $8 million. We always get questions about the racetrack and gaming facilities that are in existence in the state. We have not had any inquiries from any of them in the last year. But that would be my report for the committee. I certainly am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Durrell. So the first that I'm going to ask is in regards to the vending machines and the placement of those vending machines across the state of Kansas. So the lottery owns those machines. It's not leased out, right?
We do.
And so the lottery is responsible for maintenance?
Well, no, through the agreement that we have with the vendor, it's sort of a dual, it's an interesting process. I mean, most of the day-to-day maintenance is done by where the machines are actually placed, by the retailer where they are. We also have folks that are out in the field to make sure that they are going. If it's a serious maintenance issue, then the vendor goes, Scientific Games goes out and fixes them.
So the vendor is also responsible for the maintenance?
There is a part of that they are responsible for, sure.
In coordination with the lottery?
Yes.
Okay. I was just making sure, like, if you had a non-working vending machine at Walmart, so Walmart would be partially responsible for the maintenance of that machine. They are responsible
for the day-to-day maintenance, loading the tickets, making sure that there is the actual paper in the machines for printing Powerball and Mega Millions tickets and that sort of thing. So it's a multi-tiered responsibility, but our turnaround time on getting a machine fixed is usually less than 24 hours. So we're pretty quick on those.
All right, so the ownership of those machines is very, I want to say it's similar to the slot machines that are in the casinos, but they are owned by the lottery.
They are owned by the state. Yes, they are owned by the state, and they have already been paid for out of pre-existing several fiscal years ago. So they are a lot.
In the last portion of your testimony, or the information that you provided, you kind of briefly talked about the horse racing or the racetracks
Yes.
Throughout the state of Kansas. And I don't know if anybody had been looking at the Senate bill that has passed, and there is a $2 million allocation from the Attracting a Professional Sports Team that was set up by Senate Bill 84 for specifically Southeast Kansas with Eureka Downs. But isn't there also a bill that's in federal and state affairs that would allocate some of the revenues of the historic horse racing machines facility in Park City to horse racing?
I am not sure of that. We do not follow the historic horse racing information, mostly because that's for the purview of the Racing and Gaming Commission. But if there is one, I'm sure that they can answer that.
All right, now they'll be coming up after you, so I'll ask the same question.
Sorry to defer to them.
That's
Sorry.
fine. Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You indicated that, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been chewing, the vendor, but what's the percentage? If they're maintaining all of that, what is the percentage that that particular vendor would be making?
I'm not sure I follow your question, ma'am.
Well, you say, let's say it's in Walmart.
Okay.
All right, what does Walmart get out of this deal?
They make the same percentage that they would as an ordinary vendor. They get the same sales percentage that they would if they were selling it out of a typical machine, and I will look at which is... Yeah, and that's what I thought. It's close to 6% from
That would
sales.
be, so
Representative
that
Ballard?
would be the same as if I went to a quick shop.
Yes.
And I bought some, so they're in,
Yeah, they get the same percentage whether it comes out of machine or where it comes out of the bin in the counter.
and who is responsible for checking to see that they are doing this and that it's on the up and up?
On the up and up, could you define that?
Meaning.
Representative Ballard.
Well, let me see, I was trying to think of what I'm thinking. In other words, do you have to keep it stocked all the time?
Yes.
Do you have to do all of this?
yes.
Or sometimes
Well-
you go in,
Yeah.
this is experience. You go in and your favorite one that you've been buying all the time is no longer there.
We have, like anything else, we have some retailers that are extremely on point about making sure that their machines remain filled and up and active, and we have others that, through a number of different reasons, employee attrition, just not understanding whose job it is. Sometimes we have a little bit of a problem getting those machines filled, and so sometimes we have to take a more proactive approach with those. We do have an empty bin report that we get, and we're starting to we got it for a long time, and then they retooled it as a part of a programming upgrade. And sorry, I'm popping here, but we're starting to get that again, and so we know when a machine is out, and sometimes we'll call out and say, hey, you've got 8 bins that are empty, why? And oops, sorry, we didn't realize they were out, and they'll go fill them. So
That's the one that I hear people complain about. I should not have used up and up because that's implying that they're doing something shady.
yeah, I know what you meant.
And
That's why I
didn't
asked for the
really mean that.
definition.
So thank you for asking for the clarification.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So would you repeat for us, what is the set percentage that the state gets back for the lottery? And looks like this last year in 23 was about 25%. And the payout, is it usually close to that 67%, or is it because of the random nature, it's not as clean?
No, it's pretty close. Those numbers are fairly close. So
Thank you.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my question's been answered.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephen, thank you for being here. I just had a question on this, I guess, between the sports wagering and the casinos.
Okay.
So the casinos have the sports wagering, they do sports wagering in the casinos.
yes,
That number, like it's on page 8, does not correspond to the numbers that on page 4, right? Those are totally different?
Those are different, yeah. Those on page 4 are through what you would consider traditional casino gaming, slot machines, table games, and then the numbers on page 8 are just strictly sports wagering.
So, I mean, I know there's, for the casinos, some of these casinos have some competition.
They do.
In other casinos, but do you think the sports wagering is maybe taking some of that from the game, from the floor, I guess?
It's certainly possible. I mean, you know, folks have a limited number of dollars for entertainment purposes, and that's why we view, you know, kind of numbers tend to fluctuate. You know, the sort of the misnomer is that people will you know, spend their gaming dollars wherever they can, but there are people that are specifically interested in casino games. There are people that are interested only in lottery, and there are people that are interested only in sports wagering. There is some crossover, but it's not as big as people think. So I think that you are right that there is a little bit of a discrepancy in some of those. People are jumping between different interests, and I think certainly we've attracted a number of new players as a result of sports wagering, and that may have detracted some of the other folks that may be going to typical casinos or buying certain tiers of lottery products.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Going back to Representative Tarwater.
Sorry, I forgot. My questions weren't answered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the vending machines, did they use paper ballots? Oh, I'm sorry, wrong committee.
Like, I don't want to get into that discussion.
Can you comment on the cannibalization rate, if there is any? I know that the net new. I know there's got to be net new sales because they're in areas where we didn't previously sell lottery tickets. However, in my area, like for example, Quick Trip. Quick Trip used to have a line at the register for lottery tickets, and now the line is at the lottery machine. And so, have you done the calculations to figure out what the cannibalism rate is?
There's really, we don't call it a cannibalization rate because they're still buying products from the same retailer. So I mean, they're still getting, whether the person at Quick Trip is buying at the counter or they're buying at the machine, Quick Trip is still making that same amount of money. We do have retailers that send people intentionally to the machines for the purpose of get out of my line for the people that want to buy coffee or whatever other products that they have, and they just don't want to wait in line. But they do still make the same amount of money.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right. So my concern isn't about the retailer making the same amount of money. The concern would be these are an added expense, and I was hoping they were paying for themselves.
Oh, they are, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
For sure. No, they are definitely, we've definitely increased the number of sales just through folks that are finding it more convenient. You know, if you're standing in 8th in line and you're going to buy a Powerball ticket, and you're like, I'm to heck with this, I'm out. If you can stand in line at a vending machine and get it done in 20 seconds, people tend to respond to that. Absolutely.
Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Haven't had this much fun since I was on Fed and State. Glad to be here. 2 questions, if I may. First,
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I often go to the National Conference of Legislators from Gaming States, and we hear often about video lottery terminals and iLottery. Have we looked at any sort of proposal of what sort of revenue that would generate if we were to pass those?
Yes. The video terminals are a little bit, I mean, iLottery is obviously the thing that would make the state a tremendous amount of money. It would probably be anywhere from an additional, just from a transfer standpoint, anywhere from, if you listen to the vendors, $20 to $30 million a year. So.
Thank you. And this question's for you, and I'll probably ask of the next conferee as well, but what's the biggest difference between historical horse racing machines and slot machines?
I think that would probably be best left to the Racing and Gaming Commission. They are much more proficient in giving you the example. I certainly, when the bill was passed and it was sort of unclear as to whose responsibility that was going to be, they are much more the experts on historic horse racing, and I would hate to answer that in a way that was incorrect. I mean, I can give you my interpretation, having seen them both, but probably wouldn't be as effective as hearing it from them.
I'll save the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So has there been any progress made on getting a hotel built at the Hollywood Casino by chance? And then my second question would be, are they still paying a penalty fee for not building a hotel?
Well, you made it 35 minutes, which is longer than I thought we would. So It's interesting. We've had long conversations with Hollywood about a number of issues. They have formally asked for an extension of their agreement, which will expire in 2 years. We are obviously aware that the legislature and other bodies have a very big interest in making sure that the issue about a hotel is resolved. I know that in our discussions with them, we have, the last discussion we had is that they are talking actively with several different hotel brands about bringing a hotel to that facility. They don't have anything that is set in stone as of yet, but I know that they are working on it. And in answer to the second part of your question, yes, they do continue to pay a penalty to the folks in Wyandotte County. And one of the issues is, to be frank, is that the hotel size that was originally proposed or in sort of indicated in the reports when we first started this has changed from what the original size was going to be to a more practical size, because there's a lot of more hotel space over there now than there once was. And so trying to find that sweet spot between what is expected under the agreement that they have with the unified government and what is actually a profitable venture is sort of an interesting question for them to work out. And I know that they are working on that too. Absolutely.
Representative Alcala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard you when you said casino gambling was down, and sometimes I think that we look at what we can change inside versus looking at the outside of casinos. Have you guys thought about placement of supercharging stations outside the 4 casinos? And the reason I bring that up is because in Vegas, they're everywhere and they're full. I notice here in Topeka where we have them, they're full. And so, and the cost of them is pretty minimal. I think you can get the actual tower between $1,500 and $5,000, depending on the brand that you buy. I think that would be something that would probably bring more people in. I'm speculating.
Yeah, and that's a very good speculation, and I think that you're right. In certain parts of the country, charging stations are becoming more and more the standard. I was in Los Angeles several months ago, and when I went to a shopping mall, and there was an entire level of their parking garage that was dedicated solely to charging stations. We have not specifically addressed that question with them, at least not to my knowledge, and I know that certainly some of them have explored the option. I know Kansas Star down near Wichita, which is of course right next to the Turnpike, is very actively thinking, or at least had thought about it. Whether they actually went through with it, I don't know. I'll turn around and look at our gaming facility person, and he's shaking his head no, he doesn't know either, so but we'll ask.
Yeah, the common one is this level 2 EV, and that's the ones that I see up all over the place. Can you give me a follow-up on that email?
Sure.
Or
Absolutely. We'll see what we'll be happy to drop a note to all 4 casinos and say, hey, have you guys ever considered it, and see what they say.
Okay, and I'd be interested in.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get back to you for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you. So will those be, you put a quarter in and see how long you can charge? No, I'm just kidding. All right. Thanks for being here. And I know you've got a lot of historic racing questions, and if this is not, but this isn't directly kind of to that, but with those being put in Wichita, I mean, have you done an analysis of how that might affect, revenues, or especially, the slot machines at the other 4 casinos, and if that happens?
Again, I will no. The historic horse racing machine questions probably are best vetted for our friends at the Arcade Racing and Gaming Commission. I know that when the prospect of historic horse racing came up, certainly the folks at Kansas Star, which is the folks that are just south of Wichita, were very uneasy about that possibility, considering that there was already the casino that was near Wichita as well. I think that they are expecting a percentage drop based on that when the HHRs come online, but when that is and how much that is, I don't know. But they will be affected.
Representative Rogers.
Okay. Well, I think if we've got maybe something to review, because I guess I'm a little concerned if you've got one group that's doing part of the gambling and you're kind of in charge of everything. I'm feeling a huge disconnect, and I'm kind of uneasy about this. So maybe something we can talk about later But, I mean, I guess I would expect that you all would be, I mean, if there's gambling revenue coming in, I'm a little uneasy with them kind of being out on their own.
They're not necessarily out on their own. The folks at the Racing and Gaming Commission are responsible for the oversight and placement of those, and I'll let them talk to their responsibilities
Well,
when they're up
and
next.
and I appreciate that. Thank you,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, but we'll.
Racing and gaming is the other, they're coming up next.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Representative-
Sorry to keep deferring all to them.
That's fine. Representative Helgerson.
We've had this discussion before, you might remember, is the agreements that are with the casinos and that the governor can authorize renewals of those contracts without legislative discussion.
Correct.
Can you tell me where we're at on those contracts? And has anything been renewed in the last couple of years?
Yes, all four casinos, 3 have been renewed, 1 is pending renewal.
Can you give me the dates, and was it the same terms?
No, actually, there are better terms for the state after the renewals.
Did we go to any kind of competitive review of that, or did we just give whoever's there the first option and took it?
Based on the Senate bill that was passed, the Expanded Lottery Act, we did what was required by law and gave them the opportunity first to extend their contracts collectively, and that was what was intended under the act.
Okay, those are available tonight for review?
Sure.
Okay, if you could, I'm interested to know what the renewed contract would be.
Sure. We'll send all 3 contracts to you.
Thank you. Finally, we've had ongoing discussions on the floor about the sports betting and whether or not we cut a good deal or a bad deal, et cetera. There had been a time that we were under contract and we would have been having to pay, my memory is, some penalty fees if we had eliminated the contracts. Where are we at on that? Could we renegotiate or change the law and then go to a different system?
Well, that's a real interesting question. The contracts that we have for sports wagering, when all of the casinos came back to us, they wanted those agreements to last the duration of the remainder terms of their contracts, which in some cases was 17 years, and we basically said, thank you, but no. So what we have now are 5-year agreements with them on sports wagering. So we're in year 2, so we have about 3 more years on those agreements to keep sports wagering operating. There are parts of the contract that are statutorily created. And as a part of the original casino contracts, if the legislature were to change some of those terms, not all of them, I mean, it's going to take a dive on which ones of those are capable of being changed. I mean, I don't think you can change the percentage that they're earning or things like that, but you can get into it. There are terms that you can change that would affect the contract and not negotiate and not negate it, and not void it. If you were to void the contracts outright, then yes, I think that there are probably penalties that you would be responsible for paying. But as to whether or not you negotiated a good deal or not, I'll leave that to you guys to decide.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of the sports wagering, wasn't there a provision for remote terminals to be negotiated with the casinos in certain areas? And if so, I haven't seen any of those out there. What's kind of the status on that?
By remote terminals, I assume that you mean that the casinos could have marketing agreements with bars and restaurants and that sort of thing. It was never either. Like any sort of statute, there are always unintended consequences. And the way that the statute ended up being written, the only place that could have terminals like an actual terminal were probably either the Speedway or KC Sporting. So they would just be a marketing agreement with a bar or restaurant to have an agreement to have some sort of marketing exchange between those. At this point in time, there are 4 entities, I believe, that have marketing agreements with a platform. The way that the statute is written, the statute is permissive, not mandatory. So they may enter into a marketing agreement with a bar or restaurant. They are not. It is not a shall. So when we're talking about a revenue stream, sometimes the desire to enter into a marketing agreement which would cause that revenue stream to be diminished in some way is not an attractive option. And so there are not a lot of them, truthfully.
Representative Francis.
So you said earlier, some things in contracts in the future can be changed easily and some things
Right.
can't. Is that one of the things that's easy to change or one of the things that's not?
It's an interesting question. I mean, if from a statutory standpoint, if you change, in this sort of situation, a shall to a may, change from a may to a shall. In other words, you have to contract with, you force them to go out and contract with these groups. I don't think they're getting approached by bars and restaurants to do this stuff. I don't think there's just that interest. I could be wrong, but I'm not aware of anybody. I mean, as far as I know, they've contracted with anybody they've ever had a contact with, but I don't think that they go out and actively pursue it either. Whether or not that would be something that would have, a ramification on the contract, I don't know. I'd have to look at it a little bit closer.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you have any demographical breakdown on the casinos, whether it's getting more activity from residents or non-residents? Are we drawing people from out of states? Is there a need for more hotels?
That's a good question. I think that we can go back and look at, initially when the 4 casinos opened, I know that they were doing sort of informal surveys of people that came through the front door about, hey, where are you from, and that sort of thing. I don't think that they do that now. So I don't know if they've ever really done in the last several years, sort of a breakdown of who's coming from out of state and who isn't. We can certainly ask them if you want us to. I think we kind of asked them probably sometime last year, and the response was, no, we don't do that anymore. But we haven't done one, at least I'm aware of, in a couple of years. So how many people are coming in and how many people are state of Kansas residents and how many people are not, I couldn't tell you at this point.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a follow-up question in regards to what Representative Francis was asking about the contracts with either restaurants, bars, and also we had in there veterans organizations. And,
True.
And I know my father is the commander of the VFW post in Russell, and they have contracted with Boot Hill. And I think they were anticipating having one of those remote machines at their, what they call the canteen in the post. But it's basically they just urge people to sign up with DraftKings, and then they get I guess a stipend back.
That's correct.
And so they're kind of using it as kind of like a fundraising tool for the VFW there in Russell.
They are one of the 4, yeah.
Yeah, they're one of the. That was one of the first.
Yeah, one of the first, actually.
It was the first one. I don't think they had any influence by somebody though to do that. I mean, I didn't. You're fine, Representative Kincannon. The next question I have, and going back to the vending machines, we have differing positions in regards to the House and the Senate in regards to revenues from the vending machines. And when we passed the authorization of the vending machines, we had an amendment that got on with $8 million of that was supposed to go, of the revenues was supposed to go to the clubhouse models. And we have increased that to $9 million, and in our bill, we have it going to 12.
That's my understanding, yes.
And the Senate has kept it at 9. So I'm wondering, by that increase, how much does that impact the revenue that you receive from the vending machines?
Well, like all revenue, it's one of those, we have a sort of a mission statement of the lottery is, we'll earn it and you guys spend it. And that, so however you guys decide to divvy up the revenues that we end up with, it's certainly up to you. And I don't think that the percentage of monies that are going to mental health facilities or other issues like that really impacts the amount of business that's going through a vending machine, if that's your question. I think that they're exclusive of one another. So
okay, all right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you for being here, Mr. Durrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure.
All right, now we're going to go ahead and move on to the new facility being built in Park City for the historic horse racing machines. So I would invite Brandy White, the Director of Administration, Finance, and Audit with the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission. Ms. White.
Good morning. Construction continues on Golden Circle at the location that was previously the Wichita Greyhound Park. They intend to open, right now, their estimated go-live date is September of 2025. They will open with 1,000 historical horse racing machines and a simulcasting facility. They'll also have a pizza by the slice, a deli, Gillies, a smoothie bar, a rooftop patio, and they intend to open with an entertainment amphitheater. Future commitments for construction include a 96-room name brand hotel. They are currently in the selection process for their vendors for their historical horse racing machines. Once that happens, they will be tested by one of our gaming laboratories, and KRGC will do the appropriate backgrounding of the facility of the companies and certify accordingly. Additionally, they are narrowing their candidates for the GM position. So we are eagerly awaiting the announcement of that. The difference between an EGM and a slot machine, a traditional slot machine, and a historical horse racing machine is basically the programming. So a slot machine is based on a random number generator, and the random number generator runs behind the scenes, and as soon as you hit that button, that determines the outcome of the payout. A historical horse racing machine is based on parimutuel pools and previously run races. And patrons can go in, and there will be a series of races at different tracks that have run, and they compile them. But the patrons can go in and select the performance of the horse, and essentially they handicap the horse as they want to. So they can, if there's a spool of 10 races, for each of those races, what will be put out, the information for the patrons to look at, will be the conditions of the track that day, the previous performance of the horse that ran, the information on the jockey, and then the patron can say, this is how I think the wager will pay out. There's also a button that will allow the patron to just play the most advantageous, or what would normally be played by a bettor of that race. So, and once the selection is run, at the end, as the machine is playing, the end of the race, or a portion of the race, will show. And it will do that for each of the races in the cycle. So it's a little bit different. It's basically the mathematics behind the machine, and parimutuel machines are based on parimutuel pools and parimutuel wagering. I don't know if there are any other questions I can stand for, but.
All right, thank you, Brandy. So going back to the question that I asked Mr. Durrell in regards to the differences between, well, in the House, we don't have a position in regards to the revenues that could be possibly generated from the facility in Sedgwick County going towards horse racing. And I believe is there a bill in federal and state affairs that directs a portion of that?
So we are not aware of one this year, but I believe there was one last year. But we will definitely look into that, but we have not.
Okay, so, well, and actually this has been brought up in discussions I've had with the speaker, since the Senate has $2 million in their budget bill going to Eureka Downs. There's also this bill out there in federal and state affairs that directs some of the revenues to go towards horse racing and basically the facilities in the state of Kansas, which right now there's only one, which is Eureka Downs. So they would be receiving that once the facility is up and running, and I believe you said September of 2025.
Yes.
I believe I'm going to turn it back over to Representative Rogers. Did you have your question?
Okay, yeah, I mean, and I understand, and this is probably for an off-mic discussion further on, but, okay, so have you done the analysis of what you expect in revenue to come from these machines, as far as, and I know you have no reason to worry about how it affects the other casinos, but you know, not necessarily use the word cannibalization, but will we as a state be further ahead because these historical, machines, or what, is it going to be a wash and just a movement from other vendors' dollars? Have you looked
go
at
ahead.
that? Yeah.
So KRGC did attempt to contract with a consultant, and we couldn't get one to apply. The applicant did provide a number, and KRGC looked at it, and we, based on our experience and knowledge of the industry, we thought it was a little bit high. So KRGC took in some information that we had from the industry. Now, remember, historical horse racing machines are relatively new. So I think the number that we came up with was $84 million in revenue going to the facility, and then $24 million to the state based on the 3% tax. Now, how that impacts the existing market, we didn't really look at. I'm sure there will be some movement of funds and some movement of patrons going to different facilities, but that is going to be strictly a player and patron preference. And some of it will probably be based on how they see these machines play and whether or not they like them. And additionally, Kansas Star will have table games. This facility will not, but this facility will have simulcasting, and the casinos that we currently have cannot have simulcasting. So there are going to be a couple of opportunities for people to promote their facility based on patron preference.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Rogers.
Okay, the relationship you have with the lottery, do you communicate with them on a regular basis because of these? So do each of you know kind of what's going on? Because I guess I kind of seemed like there was a disconnect where you kind of have your silo, they have their silo, but you're both doing gaming.
No, we talk to lottery all the time.
Okay.
At each facility, lottery has employees on site. We have agents, law enforcement agents on site 24/7, and they are continually communicating. We also interact with the lottery on a lot of our regulatory issues and kind of get their take and come to an agreement on what we think, is the best avenue to protect the integrity of gaming in the state of Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, one more.
Representative Rogers.
Okay, if we do bring back live horse racing in Kansas, how difficult would it be for Eureka or somebody to get a license, and what kind of a startup cost would there be? Any other startup costs coming from the commission to get that going again?
So I think that's a complicated question, and I don't actually have real dollar values. I can't tell you there would definitely be a lead time because there will be things that we would have to get. We would have to get a tote company. We'd have to get veterinarians on staff because we don't currently have any. We'd have to get judges and stewards. We'd have to get a testing company. I mean, there would be some challenges and some things that we would have to do. And racing has kind of contracted as an industry. So the pool that you're pulling from for those resources has gotten smaller too. So there would be a lead time to get that, and how much those costs have gone up since we last had racing in 2009, would be a question that we wouldn't really know until we went out for bid for them.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have another question in regards to the machines. That's 1,000 machines in the new facility, and that's the maximum by Senate Bill 84?
Yes.
That's what I thought. And then, so going back to the devices, so is like hitting the spin button on a slot machine very similar to hitting the play button on a historic racing machine, or how do they? I mean, you said the way the odds are is by different measures, but in essence, it's kind of the same because you just push a button and then see what the end result's going to be.
It is kind of the same, but I would say when you start looking at that, it's more like an electronic poker machine. So electronic poker, those, when you hit that spin button, if a patron doesn't make a selection, those play how an experienced player would play the game, or what you would expect most frequently players to play. So that would be the same premise for hitting the spin button on a pari-mutuel machine. It will play the ticket the way that a normal player would normally play. But there's an advantage to going in and selecting the handicap if you have more knowledge, because the ticket doesn't always play the way that you would expect it to.
Right.
I
guess I'll just have to see how these things work when it finally opens up. Second. So in regards to Representative Rogers' question about kind of, and they didn't want to use the word cannibalization, but if we're going to have if Golden Circle is going to have this facility in very close proximity to Crosswinds, and Crosswinds has purchased maybe they didn't purchase, maybe they're leasing the hotel that was a Motel 6. So now they kind of have a resort style with a hotel and a facility, and Golden Circle is going to have the same thing. It seems, is there any anticipation that we could be possibly flooding the market? I mean, I know it's a risk that's going to be on Golden Circle and Crosswinds, but you're going to have two major gaming facilities pretty close together in proximity.
I think there's a risk of that, obviously, but also I would say to remember that Phil Ruffin is the owner-operator of Golden Circle, and he is very experienced in the gaming industry. So I think if he is comfortable with the risk and the performance of the facility, I think that goes a long ways.
All right, thank you. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brandy, thank you for being here. So I wanted to go back to the anticipated staffing levels. I know we talked about it a little bit when you came before Budget Committee. And you're looking at it the same as like the Casino Crossing and Boot Hill Casino, as far as needing the same amount. Even though there's not going to be, I know there's going to be more machines, but there's not going to be any tables. And so wouldn't the tables take more oversight than the machines do?
So there is a lot that the agents on site do. They are certified law enforcement officers, and so one of the big functions that they have is the criminal element. And at this facility, we will still have issues with money laundering and intoxication and prostitution and all of those issues that go along, the criminal issues that go along with gaming and are a side effect. So we will have that. These agents on site will also be responsible for the licensing of the on-site employees. So they cover a lot of that, and they do interviews with some of the employees that are level 2 and 3 on property. So they will handle all of those level 2 and 3 employees. They will also deal with the certification of the machines and making sure that those are running properly on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just viewing the table games. There are many duties that they cover on property.
Okay. All right. Well, that helps a little bit, I guess. Are there other historical horse racing places elsewhere in other parts of the state? I mean, not parts of the state, in other states.
Yeah, other states do have them. We made a trip out to Kentucky to see how their facilities operate, and in Kentucky, they do not have traditional EGMs. They strictly have historical horse racing machines, and they have performed very well.
Okay, well, what I was looking more as far as the staffing element. So what you saw there was basically needing about the same staffing element?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's it then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you asked part of my question. I want to go back to when you said about when you're going to push the button. Okay, so you say you can, I guess, influence it or change it if you would look at the history of the jockey, you did all this. Otherwise, you push it, you're going to get just what comes up.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. All right, but at which point, now this is my limited knowledge. I'm used to, if you're going to do that, it's win, win, place, or show. Does that come into, is there something you can do that you just want to do that, or does that automatically happen when you don't put in the particulars?
So you have the opportunity to bet multiple ways. And you can do the win, place, show. You can also do the trifecta and the quintella and all of that. All of those are available, and it is up to the discretion of the patron.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
All right. Are any further questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you again, Ms. White, for being here. Now I would like to invite Sharday Kane, the Senior Fiscal Analyst in the Legislative Research Department, to give us an update on the Economic Development Initiative Fund, which is funded by the revenues from the lottery. Sharday.
Good morning. I am the EDIF coordinator for legislative research. Before you, you have this long green document. On one side is the fund overview and gives a little bit of the history of the EDIF. And on the other side is the adjustments fiscal year 2023 through fiscal year 2025. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of history first. So I'm on the fund overview side, but I also have my own notes, so you won't be able to follow exactly. The EDIF was established in 1986, and it was to provide, the statutes provide that it shall be used to finance programs supporting and enhancing the existing economic foundation of the state, fostering growth through the expansion of current businesses, and the establishment and attraction of new commercial and industrial enterprises. The statute also requires 50% of the funds to, it requires 50% of the funds transferred to be split evenly between all congressional districts. There also creates 3 EDIF accounts. That would be the Kansas Capital Formation Account, the Kansas Economic Development Research and Development Account, and the Kansas Economic Development Endowment Account. For the distribution of funds, the EDIF, as stated, goes through the receives funds through the State Gaming Revenues Fund. Currently, I'll back up. In 1986, the EDIF received 60%, and it was expected to increase to 90% in 1990. However, during the 1998 session, the legislature delayed that increase, and it stayed at 60%. During the 1994 session, the transfers were changed to 85% for EDIF. During the 2000 session, the legislature changed the transfers to $42,432,000, which is still about 85%, and that is where we are today. And you also can see a revenue flow at the bottom of the fund overview side of the table. Regarding the expenditures currently, as you can see, there are a few agencies within this EDIF table that receive funding, and you can also see the fiscal year 2023 actuals. And then I would also note that for fiscal year 2025, with the passage of Senate Bill 15, which included a $1 million EDIF transfer from Sheltered Workshop Transition Fund, the balance is now in the negative currently. And I'm happy to stand for questions about the EDIF table.
All right, committee, any questions for Sharday? Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had not realized these changes had taken place, and I'm wondering how do we change the percentages, and is that by statute, and where does it come out of? What committee, or how are those changed? And if you don't know, I'll find out later. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
It would take statute to change, and it would depend on who is changing it. For example, the Department of Corrections had a bill that would have changed the EDIF, so that went to a specific committee that was for that change. So it went to a corrections. I believe it was Transportation and Public Safety, but I will look into that for you.
Mr. Chair, do you have information on that? Like, can a committee make the change? Any committee? We use a lot of the money in our Ag Budget Committee or over the years, and I just didn't know how any changes would occur.
Well, as you can see, when Charday was going over the overview, I mean, it's only been changed in essentially 4 times. There was this one time that the increase was delayed. And the reason why is because when you change or go into changing the amount of the lottery revenues to the state and how that's dispersed, it ends up being a gaming bill that when you go into changing those. And so that's probably why it only has been changed 4 times in the course since lottery has been established since 1986. I mean, we all know when we have a gaming bill, then there could be, a flood of amendments that could be in there changing the way that the EDIF is set up.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions for Charday in regards to the EDIF? All right, seeing none, thank you again. Well, committee, that's all that we have for today. We're going to kind of continue discussions in regards to the differences in the House and the Senate bill, so everybody is aware of what's kind of in the Senate bill. And so tomorrow we're going to be having a discussion with many different partners, state partners, and also cities and communities in regards to aviation. So tomorrow, until tomorrow, we are adjourned until 9 a.m.